大家好! I welcome you to Jade Palace Yangpingong. My name is Eunice, but you can call me Yaya. We all know that China is a patriarchal society. Emperors rule the land. However, this wasn't always so. So let's get started. A quick warning. This video does have mentions of violence and bodily mutilation, so just a quick heads up for you guys. Did you know that China wasn't always a patriarchal society? Prior to the Zhou dynasty in 1046 BCE, women played a larger role in the ruling class. Women were able to hold power, be generals, acted as shamans, and even own their own land. We see this type of power obvious in the life of Fu Hao. Fu Hao was one of the three queens of King Wu Ding, and she was also his general that fought victorious in many battles. Her grave was also found on the land that she owned, separate to that of her husband's. I will go into more detail about Fu Hao in another video, but just know that she was pretty awesome. Unfortunately, it only took one woman to end that, and since then, China was ruled by men, and women were meant to be seen and not heard. Daji is the woman infamous for possibly bringing forth the patriarchal system in ancient China. Her role in the novel Fuckyeahchinesemyths is that of a villain, a major antagonist, and in the end, she is blamed for the fall of the Shang Dynasty. Women have been called fox demons as a form of insult, especially beautiful women. They seduced men with their eyes and manipulate them with their bodies. So it comes at no surprise that Daji is portrayed as the ultimate fox demon in ancient Chinese folklore. In all depictions, she is usually portrayed as a malevolent nine-tailed fox spirit. In Fuckyeahchinesemyths, Daji is a fox spirit sent by haiwang.yuan to kill King Zhou of Shang, Zhou Wang. But she becomes corrupted when in the mortal realm. She even falls in love with King Zhou, and they are horrible together. They killed, tortured, taxed the poor, and ruled the kingdom with a tyrannical hand. All those who opposed them were executed. She wasn't always faithful either. Once when King Zhou imprisoned the Western Duke, Ji Chang, and his son, Boy Yikao, came to plead for his father's freedom. Daji falls in love with him at first sight and convinces the king to let him stay to teach her to play the instrument guqin. Daji tries to seduce him, but he rejects and even criticizes her. Humiliated, Daji cries to the king that Boy Yikao assaulted her and even insulted the king. Boy Yikao is executed and his flesh are made into meat pies. The meat pies are then fed to his father. At the end of the novel, when the Shang Dynasty fell, haiwang.yuan sentenced the fox spirit to death because even though she did her job and destroyed King Zhou, she was too overzealous in her task and killed too many innocent people. Other than the stories in Fuckyeahchinesemyths, here are some other facts that we know about her as a figure. She was the consort of King Zhou of Shang, and she was said to be so beautiful that he was infatuated with her beauty. He loved and doted on her. However, Daji was heartless and cruel. She was known to indulge in gluttony and lust. King Zhou constructed a pond of wine and a forest of meats, 酒池肉林, just to spoil her. It was said that King Zhou once invited 300 guests to a party at the gardens to play a lewd game of cat and mouse. One of King Zhou's other consorts objected to this party. She was put to death and her father was ground into pieces and his meat was fed to the king's vassals. Daji was said to love violence and would laugh during executions. Some of her acts of violence include cutting off a farmer's feet. She saw him walk barefooted across ice and wanted to examine why he was so resistant to the low temperatures. Cutting open a pregnant woman's belly. She wanted to see the fetus and the inside of the woman's womb for herself. She even ordered for the heart of Bi Gan, the uncle of King Zhou, to be cut out and presented to her. Bi Gan was a good person, and she wanted to know if the heart of a good man looked any different. Daji also created various forms of torture that tormented its victims. Basically, she was so bad that everyone agreed that they couldn't let it happen again. Daji was corrupted by power, and it was because of her that King Zhou of Shang became frivolous and uncaring. We cannot let this happen again. It was said that after the fall of the Shang Dynasty, Daji was executed and her head was hung on a white flag. This was to show that this woman brought forth the downfall of the Shang Dynasty. Therefore, women cannot be in power, so men must take charge. Was Daji the catalyst for what happened? Is she actually to blame? Most of her depictions are from folklore and not history, so we don't know if this is true or not. All of the stories we hear about her are only from the novel Fengshen Yanyi, which was written in the Ming Dynasty in 1567 CE. That's more than 2,000 years after she died. Historically, we don't have much information about her. Daji's time was at the end of the Shang Dynasty, and that's more than 3,000 years ago. All we know for sure was that she was incredibly beautiful, and King Zhou loved and adored her very much. The reason we know that she was really beautiful was because, ironically, her association as a fox spirit. Any women who are called a fox spirit or hulijing are incredibly beautiful, no matter if they're good or bad. But we don't know if she was truly malevolent or if she was as decadent as depicted. Although we may have some historical evidence of Daji's fate. Around 1046 BCE, King Zhou took over the state of Su. As an appeasement offering, Daji's father gave her to King Zhou as a gift and trophy. By this time, King Zhou was already in his 60s, while Daji was most likely in her teenage years. Gross. It just wasn't likely that Daji caused all that trouble. Life expectancy during that time wasn't long, and being in your 60s basically means that you already have one foot in the grave. So a old man is given a beautiful flower. Of course he's gonna obsess over her. He's the one that becomes distracted and neglects his duties, so the dynasty falls into ruins. Her reputation could have just been smeared for political gain. Someone had to be blamed, and oh no, it couldn't have been the emperor. It must have been the woman by his side. History has a bad habit of blaming women for the shortcomings of its rulers. The succeeding dynasty has to find a reason they wouldn't be the same as the last dynasty. The new Zhou dynasty had to rally people to support them, so everything bad about Daji could have just been a propaganda ploy. We won't be tainted by women, so we are better. If we want to discuss realistically, Daji most likely did not play a role in the fall of the Shang dynasty. King Zhou of Shang was probably too infatuated with her that he neglected his role. This is not the first nor the last time that it has happened. The story of Yang Guifei and Ta Minghuang is a very good example. Daji's depiction as a fox spirit may have even originated during the Tang dynasty and not earlier. The Tang dynasty lasted from 618 to 907 CE. This is more than a century after Daji's time. Again, the demonization of her character wasn't until way after her death. Thus, we will never know. Daji could have just been another victim, yet her name has been smeared for thousands of years. If this is true, then she is the victim of the first psychological warfare in history. Unfortunately, the story of Daji wouldn't be the last where a woman has to bear the blame for the folly of men. Funny enough, modern historians actually believe that both Daji and King Zhou weren't as horrible as they were depicted. All accounts and stories of these two figures were written long after their deaths. They even believed that King Zhou was intelligent and reasonable. But while the dynasty fell not because he was a tyrant, it was still because he became frivolous during his later years that it caused an issue. He was the one that gave in to women and alcohol. He was the problem. But the depiction of Daji as a violent and malevolent nine-tailed fox spirit is iconic, and no matter what we know or find out in the future, she will forever be blamed as the woman who ruined everything. I have a Teespring if you would like to support the channel. I have a lot of super cute designs that I'm really proud of, so please check it out if you would like to help support us. Link is in the description below. What do you think? Do you think that Daji was the soulless demon depicted in myths, or simply a scapegoat for the shortcomings of her husband and society? Leave a comment down below because I would love to hear what you think. Also, leave a comment if you can. It really does help out small channels like mine. You can also let me know what topics you would like to see me cover in the future. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to Jade Palace Yamingong. I would very much appreciate it. And until next time, 再见啦，拜拜。